At 88, Morgan Freeman carries a weight no Oscar can balance. A granddaughter was stabbed 16 times on a New York sidewalk. A left hand crushed beyond repair. 5 decades of brutal rejection before the world finally spoke his name. The man whose voice narrated truth for generations couldn't find words for his own grief. He survived Mississippi's cotton fields, survived Hollywood's silence, survived a car crash that stole his hand forever. But some losses don't heal. Some scars don't fade with fame or fortune. His story didn't begin in glory, and it certainly didn't end there. What really happened behind the voice the world trusted most. Stay with us, because the truth about Morgan Freeman is far darker than Hollywood ever told you. The boy nobody noticed, June 1st, 1937. Memphis, Tennessee. A baby boy is born into a world that has already decided his worth. Morgan Freeman's parents were not wealthy. His father, Morgan Porterfield Freeman Sr., was a barber, a man with skilled hands and quiet dignity, trying to build something real inside a system that was designed to grind black men down before they could even begin. His mother, Mamie Edna, cleaned other people's houses during the day and taught school when she could. 2 jobs, 2 sets of tired feet. Never enough money at the end of the month. When Morgan was still an infant, they made the kind of decision that poverty forces on families, the kind no parent makes easily, the kind that leaves a mark on a child long before he is old enough to understand it. They sent him away. He was raised by his paternal grandmother in Charleston, Mississippi. Not a city, and not even a real town by most measures. A place so poor, so forgotten by the rest of the country, that even the air felt heavy with defeat. There was no electricity in the house, no running water. The roads outside were dusty in summer and muddy in winter. And stretching out in every direction are cotton fields. Morgan picked cotton as a child, not as a school project, not as a story to tell later, as a necessity. His small hands worked the same fields that had swallowed generations before him, in a state that had always treated black life as something to be used rather than valued. This was Jim Crow America. The laws were written in courtrooms, but they were enforced on every street corner, in every store, in every glance from a white face that never quite looked at you like you were fully human. Black children entered buildings through back doors. They drank from separate fountains, cracked ones, rusted ones, the ones nobody else wanted. They walked miles on dirt roads to reach schools that were barely standing, with textbooks so old the covers had fallen off, while white children rode clean yellow buses to buildings with proper heating and teachers who were paid a living wage. The message was never spoken out loud. It didn't have to be. It was delivered every single day, in 100 small and large ways. Your life matters less. Morgan learned early how to survive it. Keep your head down. Don't hold eye contact too long. Don't say the wrong thing to the wrong person. Don't give anyone a reason. That was the unwritten rule book for black children in the Deep South in the 1940s. Not taught in classrooms, but absorbed through watching what happened to those who broke it. He became invisible. Not by choice at first, but by necessity. Invisibility was armor. And then, at age 9, something cracked open inside him. His school put on a small play. Nothing grand, a makeshift stage, folding chairs, parents squeezing into a room that was too warm. Morgan was cast in the lead role. He stepped out in front of that small audience, opened his mouth, and something shifted. For the first time in his life, he was not invisible. He was seen. He was heard. The room was watching him, not through him, not past him, but watching him. And when the scene ended, they responded. Not with indifference, with feeling. 30 years of closed doors. In 1955, Morgan Freeman graduated from high school and stared at a world with no clear path for him. Hollywood in the 1950s had one role for black actors: the servant in the background. Sidney Poitier was only beginning to chip away at that wall. For a kid from Mississippi with no money and no connections, an acting career was not a dream, it was a punchline. So he did what men of his generation did when the future felt locked. He joined the U.S. Air Force, not out of love for the military, but out of survival. It was a paycheck. It was a way out of Mississippi. But the rigid structure suffocated him. He served as a radar technician, hated it, and left in 1959 knowing one thing with absolute certainty: the only life worth living was one spent acting. He moved to Los Angeles at 22 with a duffel bag and almost no money. The casting directors took one look and offered him the same 3 roles: bellhop, janitor, criminal. See, he lasted less than 2 years before the rejection broke him down. He moved to New York. The theater scene was supposed to be different, more open, more human. But the parts available to black actors were still humiliating. To survive, he danced in the chorus at the 1964 World's Fair. He drove a taxi through Manhattan, rehearsing monologues in his head between fares. He worked as a transcript clerk, any job that kept the lights on. In 1967, he married Jeanette Adair Bradshaw. Now children were depending on him, a stepdaughter, and 3 more kids born into a home where their father was chasing a dream that showed no signs of coming true. The guilt of that was enormous. That same year, he landed a role in an all-black Broadway production of Hello, Dolly, starring Pearl Bailey. It was not a leading role, but it was Broadway real, legitimate theater. He watched Pearl Bailey command the stage with stillness rather than volume, and he filed that lesson away. The quietest voice, he realized, can carry the most weight. Then came The Electric Company on PBS in 1971. He played Easy Reader, a cool, hip character who made reading fun for children. The exposure was national. And Morgan Freeman, Shakespearean actor and trained stage performer, was beloved by kindergarteners. He was 40 years old. He had spent over 2 decades in this industry, and Hollywood still did not know his name. His marriage to Jeanette collapsed under the pressure. They divorced in 1979 after 12 years. The weight of failing as a provider, of chasing something so uncertain for so long, it had broken what they had built together. By the early 1980s, Morgan Freeman had quietly accepted a painful truth. Movie stardom was probably not coming. He was 45. He was unknown. He was exhausted. But he completely refused, to walk away from the stage. The world finally looked up. In 1980, Morgan originated the role of Hoke Colburn in the off-Broadway play Driving Miss Daisy, a black chauffeur navigating life in the Jim Crow South. Critics who saw that production walked away shaken. Here was an actor who could hold a room with nothing but presence. No tricks, no shouting, just truth. Hollywood finally started paying attention, not with blockbuster offers but with character roles, the kind given to actors whose talent makes every scene better just by existing in it. In 1987, at age 50, he was cast in Street Smart as Fast Black, a violent, unpredictable pimp opposite Christopher Reeve. And the film barely made it to theaters, but Morgan's performance was volcanic. When the Oscar nominations came out in 1988, his name appeared on the list. Best Supporting Actor. At 50 years old, after 30 years of being told he wasn't enough. He did not win. Sean Connery took the statue that night for The Untouchables. But the nomination changed everything. Phones that had been silent for decades started ringing. Then, 1989 arrived, and Morgan Freeman became undeniable. Driving Miss Daisy was adapted into a film with Jessica Tandy, and Morgan returned as Hoke. The movie swept America quiet, dignified, and devastating in all the right ways. His second Oscar nomination was for Best Actor. That same year, he appeared in Glory, the story of the 1st African American Regiment in the Civil War, alongside Denzel Washington. 2 films, 2 nominations in a single year at age 52. The 1990s brought The Shawshank Redemption, a film that flopped at the box office in 1994 and then slowly, steadily became one of the most watched movies in history. Morgan's narration as read, measured, worn, quietly hopeful, gave the story its soul. His voice didn't just describe the film, it became the film. 7 followed in 1995. Then Amistad. Then $1 Million Baby in 2004, Clint Eastwood's heartbreaking boxing drama, where Morgan played Eddie Scrap Iron Dupree, a former boxer turned gym caretaker, narrating a tragedy he could not stop. At the 2005 Academy Awards, after 4 nominations across 17 years, Morgan Freeman's name was called. Best Supporting Actor. He walked to that stage at 67 years old. He held the Oscar, and he thanked everyone quietly and sat back down. No grand speech about never giving up, no dramatic moment. Just a man who had waited half a century for something that was always his, finally holding it in his hands. But even as the world celebrated him, Morgan Freeman knew what he had always known. Success is fragile, and he was right to be afraid. The night everything broke. August 3rd, 2008. Mississippi, the same state that once made him invisible. Morgan was 71 years old, returning to his ranch on Highway 32, when his car veered off the road and flipped. The details of what caused it, an animal in the road, a blown tire, or exhaustion, were never fully settled. What was settled was this: the jaws of life had to be used to pull him from the wreckage. He was airlifted to Regional Medical Center in Memphis, the same city where he was born 71 years earlier. Surgeons worked through the night. His left shoulder was shattered. The nerves in his arm were severed. His hand, the one that had held an Oscar, signed countless autographs, gestured through 1,000 performances, was crushed beyond recognition. Doctors told him plainly, the hand would never fully work again. The nerve damage triggered fibromyalgia, a chronic pain condition that floods the body with burning, stabbing sensations that have no cure and no pattern. Some mornings, he woke feeling almost normal. Other mornings, the pain was so severe that he could not lift his arm to brush his teeth. There was no way to predict which kind of day was coming. The compression glove became permanent. A tight, dark glove on his left hand in every interview, every red carpet appearance, or at every public moment from that day forward. Cameras zoomed in on it. Reporters asked about it. Morgan gave the same measured answer every time. It's just something I live with now. What he didn't say was how much had been stolen. Playing guitar is gone. Holding a grandchild with both hands is gone. Scripts were adjusted. Entire scenes were rewritten to hide what was missing. In a 2012 interview, Morgan said something that stuck. It's the kind of pain that makes you not want to move. But if you don't move, it gets worse. That was his life now. Every morning a negotiation with his own body. He kept working not because he needed the money, but because stopping felt like surrender. In 2009, just months after the crash, he appeared in Invictus as Nelson Mandela, a man who endured 27 years in prison and emerged unbroken. But the parallel was not lost on anyone who knew what Morgan had just survived. The loss that broke him completely. August 16, 2015. Washington Heights, New York City. Early morning. Adina Hines was 33 years old. She was Morgan Freeman's step-granddaughter, the granddaughter of his first wife, Jeanette. He had helped raise her, supported her acting ambitions, stayed close even after his marriage to Jeanette ended years earlier. To Morgan, she wasn't a relative through paperwork. She was family. She was Grandpa Morgan's girl. That morning, neighbors heard screaming in front of her apartment building. They found her boyfriend, Lamar Davenport, on top of her, stabbing her repeatedly, even as people shouted for him to stop. He did not stop. He kept going until she had been stabbed 16 times. Adina Hines was rushed to Harlem Hospital. She did not survive. Morgan was in Mississippi when the call came. Friends who were with him said he collapsed. He flew to New York immediately. He arrived to police tape, crime scene investigators, and his granddaughter's blood is still on the sidewalk. His public statement was composed, dignified, written the way a man writes something when he cannot yet feel it fully. He called her irreplaceable, said her star would always shine, said her friends and family were lucky to have known her. Behind the statement, those close to him said he was hollow. He canceled appearances. He withdrew from projects. In May 2018, he was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 20 years in prison. For 16 stab wounds. For a life cut off at 33. Morgan sat in the courtroom through the entire trial. He heard the neighbors' accounts, and he saw the evidence photos. He sat still and said nothing. Because what words exist for that? 3 years later, in 2018, a CNN investigation brought another blow. 8 women accusing Morgan of inappropriate behavior and decades. Touching, unwanted comments. A work environment where his power made women feel they had no voice. Visa pulled its campaign with him. Awards were reconsidered. His carefully built image cracked in public, in real time. He issued 2 statements. The first expressed regret. The second was more defensive, focused on the risk to his legacy after 80 years of work. No criminal charges were ever filed, but in the court of public opinion, the damage was done. The voice of God was revealed to be a flawed, complicated human being. For a man who had played presidents, mentors, and God himself, there was a particular cruelty in watching the world reassess whether he deserved the reverence they had given him. What 88 years look like? In 2025, Morgan Freeman will be 88 years old. The compression glove is still there. The fibromyalgia is still there. His left hand still hangs largely useless at his side. He moves carefully now, every step measured, every gesture deliberate, always aware of what his body might cost him today. He spends most of his time at his 124-acre ranch in Mississippi, the same state that once told him his life was worth less than others. He returned not in defeat, but as the owner of the land, a landowner, a legend, a man who outlasted the system that tried to erase him. He converted part of the property into a bee sanctuary, 26 hives. He tends to them with patience. Bees don't care about Oscars, he once said. They just want you to be present. He still works, selectively. In 2023, he appeared in A Good Person, a small independent film, and reminded the world in one quiet performance why he was never replaceable. His net worth sits at approximately $250 million. He is financially secure. But money cannot return his granddaughter. It cannot repair his hand. It cannot undo the accusations or unbreak the trust. It cannot give back the 30 years that Hollywood refused to see him. What remains is this: a boy from Mississippi who refused to disappear. A legend who lost things that no award can replace and kept showing up anyway. Somewhere right now, The Shawshank Redemption is playing on a screen, and his voice is saying, "Get busy living or get busy dying." He has lived that line in every possible way. That is Morgan Freeman's story, to not the glamour version, but the real one. Morgan Freeman did not become a legend by having an easy life. He became one because he refused for 8 straight decades to let a hard life be the end of his story. A broken hand, a murdered granddaughter, a reputation that the world tried to dismantle in a single afternoon. And still, at 88, he shows up. That is not the story Hollywood tells, but it is the true one. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment below. Which part of Morgan Freeman's journey hit you hardest? We read every single one. The real ones always stay till the end. See you in the next one.